So, today we're talking about the challenges of saying no to your kids and sort of the pitfalls of making empty threats. You get a lot of questions about this and a lot of scenarios. What do you think this is all about?
I think often as parents, we get into this need to control our children's behavior as opposed to trying to teach them, right? And we often forget that they're 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. They're little kids. And somehow we get into this battle with them thinking we have to win. I think that's part of it. And then part of it, I think, is just us getting triggered from our own childhood and not having processed what happened in our childhood. And that's not to say that, anybody has had a traumatic childhood or whatnot, but no childhood is perfect. No parent is perfect. And some things you do can trigger your child, and some things won't trigger another child. It's just different personalities, different temperaments, right? So you have to go back. And I think it's important for parents to do this because it makes you a better parent to figure out what happened in your childhood to understand what's going on with your own child because it will help you be a better parent. Were you not validated enough? Were you not acknowledged? Were you not heard? Because if that happens, then when your own child is not hearing you or not listening, it will trigger you, right? And it'll make you have those same feelings, most likely unconsciously, that you felt as a child. And so then you weren't able to yell as a child, possibly. And so then you start yelling now as an adult and you yell back at your child. And obviously, we all yell. The important thing is to always go back and repair with your child.
Yeah. So, let's start with like why it's so important to actually set boundaries with your kids, even when it feels really difficult. I think in the age of coming off of like gentle parenting.
I know the gentle parenting term gets thrown around a little too loosely for my comfort. People think, "Oh, you do gentle parenting." I actually don't think I do gentle parenting. I'm quite strict.
No, you don't do gentle parenting. I was
No.
there for a weekend.
She's there when I have all my kids. I think you can use aspects of gentle parenting, but I think what happens is people think, "Oh, you just have to constantly validate them," right? But then there's no boundaries. You have to have boundaries. And the reason for boundaries is it makes a child feel safe. And the most important thing for a child under the age of 7 is to feel safe. And it's not just, "Oh, mom, dad keep me safe. They give me a warm bed. Oh, they keep me out of harm's way." Boundaries and consistency are what make you feel safe. When you don't have boundaries, you feel like you're let me give you an example this way. When a baby is in utero, right, and they stretch, there's actually a physical boundary that they can reach out, right? When they come out and they're delivered, when they reach out and they don't feel that boundary, right? It makes them uncomfortable and that triggers a reflex in them and they get startled, right? And that's why some kids like to be swaddled in the beginning because then when they try to reach out, they feel that there's pressure, there's a physical boundary.
Hmm.
So the same thing happens with kids. They need actual boundaries to tell them where they can go to, right? They're going to always try and push those boundaries, but it's your job to say, "No, this is where I'm holding it. This is not okay."
So let's do an actual example of what that would look like. Like, I don't know, ones that we get all the time, or, you're at a restaurant, kids throwing food or pouring salt or pepper shakers all over the table, or, any of those common scenarios. What would happen? What would that look like?
I think our automatic thought, especially in this day and age, is to say, here's an iPad, here's my phone, just look at this. But when you come armed with some activities, even just asking the hostess or host for some paper and crayons, that will go a long way, right? So preparing yourself first with that. And if you don't have anything, I go for the sugar packets and they make things out of sugar packets, right? I remember as a kid, like building little, like used to do with like playing cards and build little houses out of them. I did that with sugar cap packets. So a common example is with a child's just sitting there throwing everything off of their high chair and parents thinking, "I don't want to get up and go get it. I have to go pick it up." But no, you actually shouldn't go pick it up. It's annoying, but you have to get up and say, "I'm going to pick your body up and you're going to go pick up the things that you threw." You have to make them that's the consequence of them throwing it. You're not when you pick it up and just put it back on the tray and say, "You can't throw food," or "You can't throw your fork on the floor." You're teaching them, "Oh, well, I'm just gonna throw it and you're gonna pick it up." And part of it also is even when they're younger, when they're babies, it's the concept of gravity there. It's exciting to throw things and see them drop, right? But when they have to get up and pick it up, it makes them responsible for it. And I know that's more of an annoying step that you have to get up and go do that, but they are less likely to keep repeating that action. Now, say you take them out. You said, "I'm picking up your body. You need to pick up the fork that you threw on the floor." And they don't pick it up. That's when you say, "It seems like your body's not ready to sit at the dinner table. I'm going to pick you up while we go take a break." And it's not like you're punishing them, but you're letting them know sometimes your body needs a break. And it's good for you to teach them that. It's good for you to show them that sometimes you need breaks, even at home. I will often say, "I need to take a break." And I show them how I'm calming down.
It's something they need to learn that skill. But also, I like how you have said in the past to me, you need to be prepared to leave the restaurant.
Yeah.
Like, you need to go in if you're going to threaten this concept of empty threats we're talking about. If you're going to say, like, if you can't stop pouring salt all over the table, we're going to leave the restaurant. You can't just say that and then not follow through.
Right. I think the problem is that we often don't follow through because we don't actually want to leave the restaurant, right?
Right.
We don't want to, get up from the table with our friends or family, but we always have to be prepared for that. And, talking to your partner beforehand, making sure one of you guys is going to actually follow through with that. I think it's normal to give a child a couple warnings where they take a couple breaks and see how that goes. But if they're pushing it beyond the two breaks that you take them on and they can't quite settle down, that means they're telling you, "I'm not ready to sit at the meal. You've pushed me way beyond my maximum that I can actually go. So that means I need to go home." They just can't say that to you. That's when you can let them know it's not punishing them. It's saying, "Oh, your body's just showing me you're not quite ready to sit at dinner. That's all right. We'll try again tomorrow or
I
whenever
will
you're going to do
say
it."
you told me, and I think I've told this story on the podcast before, like when my son was 3, he was jumping into this kiddie pool at a place. We were on a play date and there was no jumping. And I kept saying, if you jump, we have to leave. And he kept jumping. And you were like, you have to leave.
I was on
And
the phone with you. I was like,
I picked him up out of the pool and I was like, that's it. I told you if you jump, we have to leave the play date. And I carried him kicking and screaming, soaking wet into the car. And it was miserable, but he never jumped again
yeah.
into that kiddie pool. And he's 8 now. So I do think that the empty threats can have some sort of impact, right?
Yeah, the problem with the empty threats is that you start to shame the child, right? "If you don't stop jumping in the pool, we're going to leave right now." And then there's shame around it. And then there's also no follow through. Then they know that they can keep pushing it. Well, no one did anything, so I can keep doing it. Your child's job is to test boundaries. Your child's job is to explore, to push, to see what the limits are because they don't know what the limits are. It's your job to teach them what the limits are.
I think that's the hardest thing for parents is to find a balance between being firm and being compassionate.
Well, I like to do it this way. And I get that because that is hard and knowing like how to actually do it. Notice in the scripts that I'm giving, I'm not yelling. I'm not saying, "Well, you can't sit at the table, so that
I
means we're
told you
leaving.
so.
I told you, I knew you can't do this, and you keep throwing things, and now we're gonna leave." It's, you're showing me that you're not ready to be at the pool right now. So I'm gonna pick up your body and we'll try again another day. And that's it. So it's being firm.
And you just kind of repeat that in so many ways.
I mean, I honestly, I say it once, and if they're screaming and kicking, I actually don't say it again until they're calm.
Mm.
There's no point. They're in that fight or flight mode at that point, and they really truly can't hear you. So that's at the point when you're getting them in the car seat. It is so frustrating because it is so hard because they won't get in, and you sit there in the car with them until they get in, and sometimes it takes a half an hour for them to calm down. And that sucks, and that's just part of it, and those are expectations I expect to have. Now, if a child didn't sleep well and we have a play date, I'm going to expect them to break down more easily. Better yet, I'd cancel the play date if they didn't have a good night's sleep, right? If they got up several times or whatever happened, or they've been run down or they've been overscheduled, then that's when you have to lower your expectations, right? Or make changes.
So I think what people don't realize is there is a consequence for not holding the boundary.
Right. So if you're saying yes all the time, I see. So the problem with that is that then they have no limits. They don't know, they think that they can get away with everything, right? And so then they actually don't feel safe. But there's a balance. And I think people often tell me they struggle because they feel like they should say no. But then they hear, oh, you shouldn't say no so much. Like kids hear no, 400 times a day. But then, oh, you're not supposed to say yes to everything. So it's like, how do you do it? Trust your instinct. If you don't want your child to have a cookie, don't let them have the cookie. But what you can do is when they ask for the cookie at 8 o'clock in the morning, this is where the compassion but firmness comes into play. So here's the script. I want a cookie. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. I know you want a cookie. Cookies can be really delicious, but right now we're having breakfast. But what we'll do is we'll save this cookie for an afternoon treat. And I'll put your name on it and we'll save it right here on the counter. So that allows you to prevent the tantrum from happening, as opposed to you saying, we're not having cookies, it's breakfast, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. Why would you ever have a cookie right now? You see the difference?
Mm-hmm.
So if it's just a slight change in the language helps you prevent that tantrum. Now, say the child does have the tantrum, but I want the cookie now. I hear you. I get that. Cookies are good. I'd love to have a cookie right now. But it's important to eat lots of foods that help your body grow. And this is what we do in the morning. But we save cookies for an afternoon, for the afternoon, after snack, after school snack, or after nap snack, whatever.
Speaking of the pantry and cookies, and I noticed from being at your house that your kids don't just like run into the pantry and grab whatever they want. And I have been to other homes on play dates and such where the kids are just like grabbing whatever they want. And the parents are like, no, don't take that cookie. And then it's like too late. They're already eating it and they're like, oh, whatever. But I think that's more common than you think.
No, I know. And
How do you set up that boundary in particular and make it consistent?
I think rhythm, having a daily rhythm to your day helps a lot. So when you have that rhythm where you have a breakfast, you have a snack, you have a lunch, you have an afternoon snack. This is for young children. As they get older, they don't need all these snacks. And then dinner. And then letting them know that foods that are in the pantry, if you'd like them, there's a reason that we don't just go grab random things. This is because we have to have balanced meals. And so I teach them that from the beginning when we sit there and we make smoothies together, when we make snack plates together, then eventually we make lunch boxes together. And so I teach them about having fiber and protein and fat and to make and carbohydrates to make sure to have that kind of combination. And so when they want something from the pantry, most of the time they'll come and ask me like, hey, can I have, a Soli pack? Sure. We can have that for an afternoon snack. Or you could save that for the weekend. Or they know that it's like my responsibility to monitor like their food intake. And I explain that to them because we don't want to have, for example, too much seaweed. So I do seaweed 1 to 2 times a week. Scout bars, I do once a week because I don't explain this to them because they don't need to know. Like my older ones know, but not the younger ones, that certain foods can be higher in heavy metals. And so we just monitor how much of it you have, right? This is not a food that we have every day. And it's also a processed food. It's still packaged food, right? And so we monitor how much we eat of packaged foods.
I will say, hearing you talk about it, it does sound like you're a little neurotic, but when I hear you talk to your kids about it, it doesn't. So maybe there's like a disconnect, but I want to make sure that people understand, like, you're not making your kids neurotic.
No, they'll ask me like, I think it's my oldest one who's more interested in it. Like,
Well, he's interested in food
he's
and
interested in food. So we
the
talk about
food
that.
process in
Like,
general,
because we're like
farming
also
and whatnot.
testing Like when we tested our soil, like for heavy metals, like he was very interested in that. And so we talked
Right, but
about heavy metals
he
getting into.
reads about farming practices,
Yes,
like
and so we talk about, like, how heavy metals get into food, so but like I said, I don't say that to my younger children. I talk about how
right.
these are still packaged foods, and these are things that we don't eat all the time. We try to focus on whole foods, but yeah, that's a good point. It sounds weird if you don't actually know the background of my son who's almost 11 and very into agriculture and various
That's his
practices.
passion, and cooking.
And cooking, yes. I wanna make sure to go back to the threats because I think we get often into these threats of if you throw the salt one more time, we're leaving. As opposed to just making this quick little flip. When you throw the salt, then we can't use it anymore.
Good one.
So it's just when and then versus the if, you know? When you throw the salt, that shows me that your body's not ready to stay at the restaurant. And so it's still being firm, but there's compassion there, Like
I
the
like the when and then reminder. I think
yeah.
that's
But I think it's hard for parents to get that, and it's hard for them to remember in the moment to implement it. And often I think go back, you're just getting triggered to what you feel like in your childhood. So when you process that and not feeling heard, most people didn't feel heard as a child, right? And so when they don't feel heard from their own kid and they feel like their kid's not listening, they get really mad and then they lose it and they blow up.
I also think it's very hard for parents to stay calm in the moment too. You feel the judgment of the other tables looking at you. You're
Yeah.
embarrassed by whomever you're dining with. There's a lot of factors that maybe make them feel more stressed out. So it's harder to hold that boundary. So are there some tips like for gathering yourself or remaining calm in the moment when like shit's blowing up at the table?
I think knowing that you've got to be confident in your parenting. No one's got it perfect. No one. And I know that so many times I mess up, right? But I tell myself, look, this is what all parents are going through. And when I'm more calm, even though my child is flipping the F out, I know that I can at least be calm. And so hopefully it will get him or her to get back down to that point, right? And I find that, like, we've lost that village too, so we feel like we're fully responsible, right? And that's
Mm,
hard. When we go to family gatherings, like, let the aunts, the uncles, the grandparents chime in and help, or with your friends. I think often people feel like, "Oh, well, I shouldn't parent someone else's child." We all need help. If someone were to parent my child, great, go for it. I have 4 kids, 5th on the way, like, I only have so many hands and so many eyes to be looking everywhere, right? It takes a village, and I think that we feel so much pressure to do it on our own and that we have to be this perfect parent, which is just not realistic. But I think when we're going out getting that judgment and those stares, oftentimes people are thinking like, "Oh, I've been there. I feel bad for that parent." That's really what they're thinking, but they feel too embarrassed to help or say something.
yeah. I think that people feel a lot of judgment from their own family members, from strangers in a restaurant, from things like that, and that's normal these
No,
days.
no. It's normal, but your child will break down, and it's a bummer that, like, in America, we feel so much more like that. Because if you're in Europe, there's so many more kid-centric places that it's just expected. When you see a child breaking down, like, you see it happen. Like, no one's, like, giving a crap, right? They're just going along their day, they're drinking their coffee, eating their lunch, they're like, "All right, well, that's normal."
Right.
I think the problem comes into play when the child's just screaming and the parent's not really doing anything and they're just letting them go for it, right? And versus understanding like, "Wow, my 3-year-old is really struggling right now. They're trying to tell me they can't be here." And then we leave. And that part of that is also learning for you, knowing when you can push your child and when you have to pull back. When you know, like, oh, we had a jam-packed weekend. Okay, I need a day where we're just having like a nice, slow, unstructured day, right? And so you have to have that balance.
Is there anything else that you want to add?
Maybe we can do a few more examples, like say your child's banging on the table. What's the script to use? I see you're banging on the table. That makes a lot of noise. You may bang on the table in music class. Right now, we're eating dinner. And so it's just letting them know what they can and cannot do and when they can do it. Right? And say they keep banging on the table. Oh, you're showing me you're not ready to sit at the table. I'm going to pick up your body and go take you for a break. And that's it. It doesn't even have to involve a threat. And I think we have to move away from the threat and just understand, when does our child need a break and when do they need to say, that's it, we need to leave. Because sometimes they just need a reset, right?
Mm. How about in the supermarket when the kids are running off? People ask you about that all the time.
Yeah. So before you go to the supermarket, you have to prepare your child with the rules. It's not like, say you start your job, they don't just well, I don't know about every job, throw you in and be like, all right, go in the deep end and figure out how to get back up, right? They'll give you some instructions and they'll prepare you, right? So before you go to the grocery store, have a set of rules. These are things you may do, these are things you may not do. When we go to the store, you may run to the grocery cart, but you have to stop right when we get there. You stop right at the grocery cart, but you can run as fast as you can when we get there. And then I'm going to put you in the grocery cart, but you may put the packages into the grocery cart. Now, remember, the ones that are heavy or glass, you have to put down oh so gently so they don't break. Right? So those are things you can kind of teach them.
I like the reminder thing because I notice, also give your kids a reminder before getting to the restaurant. Like
Yeah.
in the car, I heard you say, like, we're going to a restaurant. And what do you say? 'Cause
So when you're in the car, that's the best way to go through rules because they're in a car seat. They have nowhere to go. They can't get out. They're strapped in. And those are great times to review things. Same when we get home. I let them know, oh, soon we're going to be pulling up to the house. Oh, and we go through it over and over again. Lots of repetition. We're going to take our shoes off and put them in the shoe basket. Then we're going to take our lunchbox out of our school backpack and bring it to the sink. We're going to hang our lunch bag up on the hook. And then we'll come back and wash our plates all together. And so we kind of go through the motions of what we're going to do beforehand. And then soon they'll start to repeat it.
Mm,
And it just becomes this nice, consistent rhythm to their day.
yeah, I got to start that.
I'm not great at it all the time, but when you have a
You
nice
seemed
rhythm
to be
in
pretty
place,
good at it when I was there.
when you have a nice rhythm in place, it's easy to come out of it a little bit sometimes and give yourself a little bit of leeway.
Mm, true. Okay.
All right. Hopefully these scripts are helpful. If you need more scripts on these, let us know. But I think the biggest reminder is to have empathy for your child and knowing that they're still 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. They're really young. And even like your 8-year-olds, when you're getting into a battle with them, wow, I'm battling it out with an 8-year-old. What am I doing? And sometimes I have to remind myself of that too. We all do.
Say it
But I
louder
think
for
it's,
all the parents to hear.
yes, a reminder for all the parents. We all have to, say your child's age out loud in your head, whatever it takes, and to remind yourself so you can have some empathy.
That's a good tip.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Great.